This is the Internet Court of Truth. I'm going to be the plaintiff in this trial. What the Internet Court of Truth is about is if you've got something that you believe is true, or you think that something is a lie, and you want to find out what other people think, this is where to come. This is where to figure that out. Today is a case titled Who Humiliates You, which is really about this really powerful emotion, but what it's really about is this word humiliation, which has some really crazy properties to it, which I found to be fairly unique. The case I want to make is it's true that divisive liars humiliate you. In other words, if you're encountering somebody who's divisively lying, he's humiliating somebody. Always. That's my argument. What I want to do is go through some of the background I had in the original case, which is here. I had referenced an article which was in the New York Times at a time when you could read the articles from the New York Times. You could read one or two or three for free. You can no longer do that. And so I apologize profusely. In the YouTube, I have made available a link to the whole article, which is what I'm just clicking on right now, which should show the article. This is the whole article that's referenced, and I apologize that at the time I thought they wouldn't change what they were doing, but they decided to change. Basically, if you listen to Trump, pretty much every time he comes down on somebody, he makes a humiliating remark. He tries to humiliate them. It's almost always, if not always. I found this New York Times article by a guy named Thomas Friedman. This article caused me to think about the word humiliation and realize that it was much more important. I thought it was just another word, but it isn't. It's special. So he starts off with the article. It says, about 4 years ago, without asking anybody, I changed my job description. It used to be New York Times Foreign Affairs columnist. Instead, I started calling myself the New York Times Humiliation and Dignity columnist. I even included it on my business card. It had become so obvious to me that so much of what I'd been doing since I became a journalist in 1978 was reporting or opining about people, leaders, refugees, terrorists, and nation states acting out on their feelings of humiliation and questing for dignity. And then he says the key thing, the two most powerful human emotions. One is humiliation, and the other is dignity. That majorly struck me. I'd never heard anybody say that the most powerful human emotion is humiliation. It blew me away. This whole article is him analyzing that and talking about Trump and how he...
But does that kind of suggest that the most powerful thing you can do to somebody is to humiliate them?
That's exactly what he's been doing all these years as the foreign affairs columnist for the New York Times. He always finds what's causing the thing to happen is humiliation and being acted out in some sense, right, and a quest out of the humiliation. Here's the YouTube that's linked on the case, and I made a PDF of the article, and this is the magic code that will get you the article so you can read it. I realize most of y'all could not have possibly read this article, but it's a really interesting article to read because it's Friedman writing it, because he's just such a good writer. But also, this claim of his is just amazing. I've been convinced for a long time that divisive lying is what Trump does. He divides people up. These guys are the stupid idiots that don't know what they're doing, or terrible, nasty people, or whatever. And then these other guys are the guys that are the good guys. What Friedman does is Friedman actually analyzes how all that works in the sense of the kinds of behaviors it will cause in international politics and in people's relations and so forth and so on, and how it works in political systems and so forth and so on. But what got me was that I believe that anytime somebody humiliates you, it's 100% of the time a lie. And it's a divisive lie. It's meant to separate you from the rest, and for the rest to think that you're not as good as they are, type thing. So it turns out that there's a pretty simple way to analyze what I'm talking about, and I put that in the YouTube since I couldn't go back and change the court case. My argument is that humiliation is always divisive lying. It's always lying. There are three parties to any humiliation, act of humiliation. The first party is the humiliator, which is the person or org that's degrading you, lying about you. The person or org being humiliated, the target. And then the third is, I call the judges or judge. These are the people who are evaluating whether or not the humiliation is true or not, in other words, whether the person has actually been humiliated. Actually, the humiliator, there's a question about whether or not the humiliator intentionally is trying to humiliate you. And I think Trump, a lot of times you may humiliate somebody and you didn't know you were doing it. So I think there's non-intentional lying going on where you say something that if you knew how it was being taken, you probably wouldn't have said it. The humiliatee, if the humiliator is not lying, or if he's telling the truth, he lost the game or whatever. If the humiliatee believes he's been humiliated, he could well be deceiving himself. In other words, he may think that he's been humiliated when in fact the judges, other people, may think you were not humiliated, you lost the game. Okay, you did great the whole time. But the person who was the humiliatee believes that he was humiliated, and so he takes revenge or whatever. Or in the case of the divisive liars, he's actually got to take some action that will cause the attempt to dividing people up to work. There are those three, but if there's humiliation in the puzzle, there's always divisive lying, but mainly there's a lie. In other words, there can't be humiliation unless one of those three parties is lying, if not a couple of them. Tor, who intentionally is humiliating you, is almost certainly lying, and he knows he's lying. So he may say that you're a nasty woman, and he most certainly knows that you're probably not a nasty woman, or you may be a nasty woman, but you are not universally a nasty woman. You might be being nasty to him, and therefore you're a nasty woman, but that's not true. for other people. Another one is the humiliatee can just decide, I'm not going to be humiliated. Or they can decide, I'm going to be humiliated, and then they feel humiliated. But they don't realize that they may be engaged in self-deception, that they shouldn't be humiliated. That if somebody else was in that position, they wouldn't feel like that person had been humiliated. That person was a perfectly good person, and so forth and so on. And then the judges are going to be split. It's divisive lying. Some of them are going to look at this and say, yeah, he was humiliated and he deserved it. And other judges will look at him and say, no, let's say the humiliator was lying. There's nothing wrong with this guy. He didn't do anything wrong. Or the judges may look at the humiliatee and say, you're blaming yourself and you really shouldn't be. We like you, but the judges are divided. So the divisive lie is there. This is a great example of what the fundamental principle of the be it lies is, that there's no sentence that can be said that somebody can't think is a lie, because people are just not the same. Humiliation has this weird property that I believe that it's always a lie and that it's always a divisive lie. I'm willing to be handed exceptions. I'll tell you why I believe those exceptions are not exceptions. I said that this is the truth. It's a common, effective way for a divisive liar to lie is to say humiliating things about you. I absolutely believe that. Is it the whole truth? I'm saying no. There are other ways to divisively lie than simply humiliating somebody or some organization. So there are other ways you can divisively, and I agree with that. So I think that there are other ways. Is it nothing but the truth? I said within the context of what I'm saying, yeah, this is nothing but the truth. This whole word concept of humiliation is a very special concept, and Friedman put it out right. He said pretty much no matter what language you speak, where you are in the world, humiliation is the strongest emotion. What's the deceit? I say that the deceit is that the lie is misleading. In other words, that the humiliation may be factually true or not, it's still a lie, since its intent is to harm you, or its effect is to harm you, either to yourself or to the guy who's doing the humiliation. Is the deceit or truth intended? Yeah, I think that the truth of what I'm saying is intended. What's the motivation behind the truth or lie? I said that the motivation is to persuade you to hate something or someone. In other words, it's to be divisive. What's the social acceptability of the truth or lie? I think that humiliation is just not socially acceptable. That's just my own opinion. What label would improve the social acceptability? I think, whether true or not, this is something that divisive liars do to create division, which is humiliation. And that's my verdict. So what I'm going to do is go through the jurors and call out the jurors, and each juror should give me about a 20 or 30-second summary of their verdicts, and we can talk about that. Juror one.
That's me. I agree with your case here and what you had to say. And it made me, always when we're having a case, it makes me think further and on to other parts of it. So I was thinking, what are the situations when people are using humiliation other than Trump? And I thought of corporal punishment. That's a form of humiliation. And they use that in schools. A lot of the schools have stopped. sports, and I think in sports they do it. The hazing and stuff is a humiliation. And I think they use it with prisons and jails. Cops do that, humiliate people. And I don't agree with it. I don't like it. I don't do it.
And I think in schools, particularly high school, self-humiliation is more common than actual humiliation by somebody else.
And then, hey, then there's the humiliation of leaving the toilet paper hanging out of your
That's right.
pants in the back, walking down the street.
So that's actually an interesting situation, because let's take Trump on with the toilet paper hanging out of his shoe. He should have been humiliated, right? But I don't think he was.
I don't think he was either, and that's a great point. Because that embarrass anybody, at least embarrass you, especially nobody tells you. You have to figure out everybody's been watching you walk around like that.
Yeah, you may have identified the one case where humiliation is not a lie.
But I think there are people whom you can't humiliate, because somehow they're proof in some way.
That
I don't know
psychopaths.
how that works. It's true.
Yeah, this may actually be the exception. This is crazy, but I hadn't thought of it. I was thinking there, if there's no exception to this, is great. But I'm just going to make the other argument. I'm going to make the argument that he should have been humiliated, but he wasn't. And the fact that he wasn't was a lie. He was lying to himself when he should have been humiliated. Okay. Just to say something, because that's the measure that he would put on somebody else. If Joe Biden had been caught doing that, you can bet.
He would have been humiliated to the 10th degree if it had been Biden.
That's right. And so the fact that he would not be humiliated was actually a lie that he was perpetuating on himself, and by attempting to put out to other people that you dare not treat me like I've been humiliated, which would keep it in the. So juror 2.
Would that be me?
Okay.
That may be you, Gary.
So I have a couple of thoughts. I put in the chat one item. So if something is true, is it no longer humiliation but denigration? Or
so this is a question. So denigration is a synonym for humiliation, where the denigration is more direct. I think you could argue that it's a synonym.
Related to that, to some extent, humiliation seems to be a self-perception. Like it might be the case that all humiliation is really one's own self. It's your effect. It's your response to what somebody says to you.
So my argument is that that's the reason I had the 3 parties there. That's just one of the ways in which humiliation happens, is that you feel humiliated, but you could well be in a situation where the humiliator humiliated you, and a whole bunch of judges who people were watching the thing thought you were humiliated, but you didn't.
Sure.
Yeah, judges.
So there's the humiliation is a noun that actually refers to any of a set of a number of humiliation attributions onto the humiliatee, and whether or not the humiliator intended it. In other words, he was the one who believed that you deserve to be humiliated. The humiliatee, where you're the one who believes that you either were or were not humiliated, that if somebody thinks that you were humiliated, that's their problem, not yours. Or the judges, where you can have almost certainly disagreement among people as to whether or not you were actually humiliated or you were actually shouldn't have been humiliated for yourself. You should have pride in yourself, and so forth and so on.
The example I came up with is, let's say you're a race car driver, and the guy who won the race comes to you and tells you afterward, you're the worst driver on the field.
Yeah.
So that's an example of, it may actually be true. So the question is that a humiliation or not?
And it's up to you to decide it. It's up to him to decide whether he was intending to do it to humiliate you or just stating a fact that he thought was just a fact. He may not have had intended to humiliate you at all. Okay. He was just saying it.
Yeah, but I think,
and it's also whether the judges, what they thought.
yeah, but I think humiliation is often, it involves not just 2 or 3 parties, it's the public. So you often feel humiliated if there are many people surrounding you and seeing your reaction. But if it's just in that example, if that race car driver came to tell me that I'm the worst driver, it wouldn't be humiliating. It might be true. Might be offended, but I don't know if that would be humiliating, because I think it needs to be public. There needs to be people there
Yeah,
to
there needs to
witness.
be a public aspect. That's the reason in this list that I put in, that I can't tell whether you can see this list that I put in. There are 3 parties to the humiliation. One's the humiliator, the other's humiliatee, and the other one is the judges.
So the judges is more than one person,
Yeah,
obviously.
it
Okay.
can be the persons
Yeah.
orgs that are judging that
Witness.
are person.
Yeah.
I think humiliation really always has those 3 parties, which is exactly what you just said.
So it seems to me that the lie is not the statement itself, but the implication that the humiliator is either implicitly or explicitly saying, not only that is this true, but you're bad in some way, which is untrue.
Right. And it's also, so whether or not he's trying to do this, in your example, the guy who said you finished last, he may not have intended to be divisive at all, and he may not have intended to be humiliating you. He was just stating a fact as far as he's concerned, and you took it as humiliation. Some judges out there in the public space, some of them thought, yeah, you should be humiliated. You should have at least come in next to last. When I was in high school, I ran track and cross country, and in my class was a state champion.
Like me in wrestling.
It was, yeah, it was constant humiliation. I never got out of the humiliation on that.
That's a very serious question. That
Never lost.
feeling humiliated.
Huh?
But you had pride in what you performed. Anyway.
I don't know how I survived. I got letters for some reason, but I thought that those were not deserved.
So you felt humiliated, but where's the lie then?
Oh, so the lie was I was humiliating myself. I was lying to myself.
Oh,
I shouldn't have been humiliated.
in what way was that a lie?
Because I'm lying to myself. I shouldn't have been. I should have said, "Oh, I'm perfectly good." Instead, the guy's name was Clark. Just so you know, I remember his name from 50 years ago.
The humiliation is that he doesn't remember you at all.
I'm sure he never did. So that was juror 2. So juror 3.
Yeah, juror 3 is me. Yeah, I've got a couple of things to say. I think this is a really very interesting idea. But it seems to me, firstly, humiliation occurs because it's true, not because it's a lie. It's something about you, a truth that's been revealed.
Yes, there is a truth there, yeah.
Whether
whether or not anybody regards it as humiliation is a different question.
I think it's
because if someone's trying to humiliate you with a lie, your defense is that's a lie. It's not. It isn't quite so damaging. It doesn't get to you personally because it isn't true. It isn't a truth about yourself.
But even if it's true, I know as you get older, you realize that failure is standard. If anybody goes through life and doesn't fail, I don't believe them. You realize you shouldn't feel humiliated just because you made a mistake or you're being dumb sometime. Everybody's dumb sometime. But when you're younger, it can.
All right. Could I just say something else too? Just I lived in Spain, of course, where honor, one's personal honor, is a real thing. It's an existential stuff. People have it, and you get employment contracts in which you get clauses saying that you mustn't do anything to impugn the honor of your employer, rather, and things like that. So, but in that situation, when people, and I've experienced it, when people start to stand on their honor in a defensive way, how dare you? I mean, I'll swear to you on the life of my mother that, that this is true. I know they're lying to me, that they're using this idea of dignity to hide the fact that they're lying.
That's really interesting. I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's actually really interesting. This is, yes. Honor may be just like humiliation.
It's a defense. Yes, it's a defense,
yeah,
but it doesn't have to.
Yeah,
but the honor doesn't have to be true.
That's
right.
right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
People in Spain sue each other. If you swear at your neighbor, he can take you to court for impugning his honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's worse in Japan.
Oh, yeah, maybe so.
You have to get your knife out and cut your stomach open.
Oh, yeah. Or at least your little finger. Yeah.
But no, go ahead.
No, there's just the 2 points I wanted to make about that.
So, juror 4?
That's me. Yeah. I think, Bob, the more your cases make a person think, honestly. I agree with what the jurors are saying. At what point, or my question is, how if you try to humiliate, humiliator, is that
Yeah.
What is that then? And obviously you're trying to get a reaction, but if someone has publicly tried to humiliate you and you try and expose them and they feel humiliated. So there's two parts to it, I guess. It's how the humiliatee, I'm saying it that way, reacts to the humiliation.
I think all three of the participants there play a role, and somewhere in those three will always be a lie. That's what my argument is. Somewhere among those three participants, and almost definitely it'll be participant 3, there will be some people who thought you were humiliated and other people who thought you were not. Even if you didn't think that you're humiliated and the humiliator didn't mean to humiliate you, some people did think you were humiliated. That can happen, and that's probably a lie, because the humiliator nor the humiliatee thought it was a lie, so you were wrong. You were seeing something that wasn't there.
I see your point.
Yeah, so it's crazy. It's crazy. But Andrew had it right. Honor is like that.
Well, yeah, honor is the opposite of humiliation.
Yeah.
Right?
It's super opposite of it. I had never thought of that. This is crazy. I should have thought of that. I'm from the South. We have honor too down there. We just don't have it as strongly as they do in Spain. Juror 5?
That's me. I just want to piggyback off what you were saying in relations to what Andrew had said. Myself being from the South, I've never thought of it like that as well. And there was an incident whenever I was growing up where I was humiliated real bad by someone, and kind of like in the same position you were in with the lettering, Bob. This guy, I seen him a few years back. He had no clue who I was, and I was like, "You don't remember me?" And he was like, "Who are you?" I was like, "I'm the one you called Roach Girl all the time through high school." And he was like, "Oh my God," just like stupid stuff or whatever. But yeah, I agree 100%. And this trial really took me through it. I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah, so this is
But,
a crazy.
yeah.
So I told y'all last week this was going to be a crazy trial. This is a crazy one. I can't get with this
Thanks, Bob.
Juror 6?
I couldn't read the full article, unfortunately, because I don't have a Medium subscription. But
So
if I can give a short,
put in, so this New York Times article, the Medium description,
yeah.
But in the YouTube now is the New York Times article, which is vastly better written than the one I wrote. And
Oh, I didn't see that.
and so I just put it in the comments. I just did this right before the trial because I noticed that New York Times was no longer giving you free or a free read of I thought that they used to give you 3 free reads a month. And so I put the New York Times article in thinking that people would be able to read it. Anybody can read that link, and it is the full article. Anyway, so go ahead.
I'll take a look at that. But yeah, if I can give a short summary, I would say that the intention of a divisive liar is it's really about truth, in my honest opinion. It's more about manipulating perception to serve some type of hidden agenda. And these people, they intentionally distort truth in ways that could cause some type of polarization within different communities. And in most cases, more often than not, it's for personal or ideological gain. And they often operate on the principle of a divide and conquer type of scenario because I feel like they see that if people are united, it's harder to manipulate or control them. But if said liar can put one group against another through lies and misinformation, they can weaken a collective resistance and shape reality in a way that benefits them. And in the end, they'll come out on top.
And that's the whole point of why they're doing it is they want to come up.
Yeah.
They want to be on top.
Yeah.
They want to be the humiliator. They want to be the humiliator.
Yeah.
So that's good. Juror 7. Is Juror 7 here? Juror 8.
Juror 7 was here. I don't. Yeah, Juror 7.
I'm Juror 8. Should I
Okay.
wait for Juror 7 or?
No, go ahead, Juror 8.
Sorry, I'm here.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Juror 7.
Sorry about that. What I have to say about the case is that lies are often motivated by fear, self-protection, or desire for control, while truth is driven by honesty and clarity. Humiliation is a powerful trigger for lies, I think, and it makes people feel vulnerable or powerless. Socially, the truth, I think, is unacceptable. However, too many lies can damage truth and relationships. Both truth and lies can manipulate emotions, but lies, especially those based on humiliation, have lasting negative effects. That is what I have for children.
That's neat. That's a good. That's more worth thinking about. So that's a really interesting perspective. Juror 8.
Yes, I actually would like to agree with what Juror 6 said. That's the whole plan of a divisive lie is to break down the fundamentals, come on top, because that's all they really care about. And I think I said so in one of the verdicts where I said divisive, they don't care what happens to anyone as long as their lies take effect. Whatever happens afterwards is of no effect to them. And if the humiliation has to involve with lies, then yes.
This sounds good. Since we've got one new person, Gary, you must finalize your verdict if you haven't finalized your verdict yet. If you wait even 10 minutes after the trial, you will not be able to finalize it.
Yes, so just hit finalize verdict now.
Just hit finalize verdict now.
Yeah,
and then you won't, if you don't do that, you won't get paid.
Okay.
So you got 10 minutes. If you haven't done any of the verdicts, you got 10 minutes to do them.
Yeah.
And I think you saw how to do them.
Let's see.
Bob, that was a very good trial.
Yeah, this was a discovery for me. I had never thought much about it and realized how unique it was. It's just this unique thing in terms of truth and lies. Crazy. The weekend, when I send out the video of the trial that we're recording right now, I'm going to send out a way to think about getting sponsors. One way to do is decide you want to run a bunch of trials on a particular subject and then do a Kickstarter. and actually raise some money on the internet to run some trials. And then you could be the sponsor.
Okay.
So that's another way to do this, particularly if you have a whole bunch of, so that's essentially what I'm doing is I decided I was going to run trials on all my articles that I've written for the last 3 or 4 years. And so I'm running one trial per article because I've been studying this. I've been studying truth and lies for a while. I'm thinking this is, just thinking that a lot of these things that I'm thinking are true, other people may not think they're true, or some things that I think are lies, other people may not think they're lies, and I just don't know it. So this is a really valuable thing for me. But that's another way to do this is is to come up with something that, Natasha, you could do cats. I'm serious. You could do truths and lies about cats and to run a Kickstarter to raise some money to do, I'll pick a number, 20 cases on truths and lies about cats. Yeah, and then put it up on and let people find out what, and so you do things that what you're really doing is you're showing people what other people think about what's true and what's not true about cats.
Okay. I'll think about it and see what I can come up with and compare.
Probably do 20 cases
Yeah.
of where you make your case, and it would be a really interesting thing to hear because you have more experience with cats than almost anybody I know.
There's a lot of cat
I do
lovers
have
out there that would help fund it too.
That's right. There are a lot of cat
People love
lovers.
cats.
That's right.
I don't know. Mine are dwindling down though, y'all. I'm dwindling
No, you'd
down
be
fast.
great. Yeah, you'd
I
be
thought
great.
you had a litter.
I've got over a litter right now. I've got one that's pregnant.
Constant little baby
Yeah.
cats.
The last one's passed away. The last litter just passed away. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes there's a lack of food. Okay, so we'll see y'all next week.
Okay. Bye, bye, y'all.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, bye everybody. See you.
Bye.
Thanks.